So thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. It's an honor for me to speak to such a qualified audience and to know you, to meet you in this very stimulating and interesting place. My speech will be about cultural diplomacy as a strategic tool to enhance dialogue, cooperation, rule of law. And I'm a politician, I'm a journalist too. I'm a long-time serving public servant. Today I'm a senator. I've been mayor of the most beautiful city in the world. Berlin is important, of course, it's wonderful. And Berlin is, I've been the first mayor elected by the people in '94 for 2 times. And I was young, I was 39. You need energy when you do that complicated job. But Berlin is, it's very nice to be in Berlin talking about cultural diplomacy because when you see the history of this city, it shows how peace is necessary through dialogue, through comprehension, and through decision too. So I will give you some overview about my experience as mayor, as Minister of Culture particularly, and what is my opinion of a small part of cultural diplomacy. Could culture be the answer to the main challenges that we face today? How can we favor the dialogue among civilization? How can we approach the big geopolitical shift in world affairs? How can we afford the global economic downturn? Culture always brings along a good answer. I know it is not fashionable to highlight this issue in a time of economic and financial crisis. People are worried, especially in Europe, about their salaries, about their jobs, about their savings. And many governments really lack innovative solutions on how to tackle the effects of this crisis. Austerity has become the biggest obsession for decision makers, media, and the public opinion. And until the numbers will say that we are out of the danger zone, it will be difficult to push governments to raise their investment in culture. Nevertheless, it would exactly be one of the most strategic choices to make it in a time of crisis, investing in our soft power, in the capacity to attract investment in the most qualified part of our societies, in the expression of our history, heritage, and modern creativity. The unduplicable part of our economies. So let me try to witness a few personal circumstances I had the privilege to experience as a public servant. Soft power is a concept, as you know, invented by a Harvard academic, Joseph Nye, and it's essentially the ability of a country to attract others because of its culture, its political values, its history. We know that Goethe Institute is about, in Germany, your most genuine history. Alliance Française is all about French soft national power, so as the British Council. The Beijing Olympics were an exercise in Chinese soft power. Americans created the Voice of America and the Fulbright scholarships, but probably Hollywood and MTV and McDonald's have done more for American soft power around the world than any specific government activity. Soft power is something that really emerges partly because of governments, but partly despite governments. My opinion is that in a time of austerity, there is still more room for culture and soft power. It has been so in the past and will be also in the future. Think about the German genius Wolfgang Goethe. His grand tour was the main subject of many of his masterpieces. Young European elite of the 17th and 18th centuries often spent 2 to 4 years traveling around Europe in an effort to broaden their horizon and learn about language, architecture, geography, and culture in the experience known as the Grand Tour. Also, love was part of the Grand Tour. Not always in the biographies, but in the memories, yes. The Grand Tour began in the 16th century and gained popularity during the 17th century. The term Grand Tour was introduced by Richard Lascelles in his 1670 book, Voyage to Italy. The Grand Tourist, you see Rome and behind Goethe, his big globe. The Grand Tourists were primarily interested in visiting those cities that were considered the major centers of culture at the time. Paris, Rome, Florence, Naples, Pompeii, Venice were not to be missed. The majority of popular destinations were in Italy, and this made the strength of my country in a time when Italy did not even exist, when it was a collection of small cities and states divided and into war. At every single stop, Wolfgang Goethe takes notes on what he sees and on his feelings vis-à-vis the surroundings. While in Rome, he writes, Rome is the capital of the world. In this place, the world history is here, and I count to be born again the day I entered in Rome. Its beauties have heightened me up to their majestic highness. And he continues in a spectacular crescendo of feelings and emotions. As you may imagine, it's ecstatic for me to read again these words, but maybe it is more interesting for this audience to know that when we built, together with my administration, the new auditorium designed by Renzo Piano, many critics said it would have been a cathedral in the desert. 10 years later, we are celebrating nearly 10 million visitors paying their ticket and a self-financing capacity of 63% of this cultural center total budget. Because culture, of course, is not only what I'm going to tell you today. It's not only about heritage. It's experiencing, traveling, studying, of course, monuments and history, but it is the contemporary cultural production in all different fields of human and industrial creativity. When 59% of young people, according to a recent poll, declared they have created images and picture contents in the internet, 38% create films and videos, 37% create musics, and many among them create games, electronic games, or write electronic books. It means that something really new is happening in terms of cultural and social potential. Here you see some 3D rendering and how to understand the ancient history through modern lens. The ancient landscape of a city like Rome can be rendered in a revolutionary way that helps us to live there, not only to study and understand. That's due to technology, that's due to contemporary experience. Let me now bring you the personal experience I had serving my country as Minister of Culture of Italy between 2006 and 2008. We had a very clear philosophy at that time. Cultural diplomacy is no substitute to the army or to the foreign service, but it should be a key for the larger role and responsibility of my country in the international scenario. We moved along the lines of preservation and promotion of Italian material and immaterial cultural heritage, a strong investment on innovation and cultural entrepreneurship, an unprecedented fight against crime, and for the recovery of stolen art crafts. Let me spend some words on this issue, so specific when affording the concept of cultural diplomacy. We moved from a conviction: the fight against art crime is not an issue related to national pride, chauvinism, or nationalistic identity. It is a universal fight for legality, transparency, and cultural values. It is also a matter of fair diplomatic relations among countries, and we tried not to resolve controversies only in court houses, but to establish a broad negotiation based on course of the rule of law. What you see here, it is an interesting document I received as I became minister. These are not so easy to see from there, but these are some very important artifacts that were stolen from my country. And so these other. You see a very interesting relation between some Polaroid pictures that were taken by the Carabinieri, by the law enforcement in my country, and that were the basis of a negotiation with a great museum, the Getty Museum, where these artifacts arrived through illegal activity of which the directors, the board were not responsible, but through an illegal network that brought from archaeological illegal excavation through an illegal network and finally to the United States, to Malibu, California, these incredible, important masterpieces. We interpreted the recovery in only 20 months of several priceless works of art that were stolen from the Italian heritage as a new standard and a new era for international cultural relations. No result would have been possible, as I told you, without the fair cooperation we had from archaeologists, state lawyers, diplomats, judges, and the Cultural Heritage Preservation Office of the Italian Carabinieri. Because, as this picture shows, art is love. Art is something very important. Art is not only cold marble pieces. It is our identity, but not in nationalistic terms. Why do I say so? Because the ethical foundation of our action of cultural diplomacy intended to set a standard also when other countries claim Italy to return objects of art or other relevant archaeological pieces. My country, under my administration, for instance, returned to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan 96 archaeological findings. Iran was returned 41 items recovered in Italy as a result of investigation to dismantle networks of illicit trafficking, and Libya eventually received its Venus of Cyrene after its formal request to the Italian state. It was the national pride monument that was in a museum in Rome. It was stolen. It was a colonial responsibility, and it was brought back to this country. These ideas, principles, laws, and relations between Italy and other countries were the foundation of a new way of conducting foreign and cultural policy. From a legal standpoint, the foundation of our action was the UNESCO Convention of 1970, it's very important, on illicit traffic of cultural property. Let me briefly list some of the achievements we reached in those 2 years of government. The first result was the negotiation between the Italian state and the Metropolitan Museum of Art of New York to return important archaeological treasures like the Eufronio crater, an inestimable masterpiece, back to Italy in January 2008, or the silver of Morgantina, 15 Hellenistic items from Sicily. This negotiation cannot be considered as a simple restitution, but a broader and more comprehensive cultural agreement. The spirit that we used to conduct the negotiation and the subsequent agreement were decisive in the creation of a broader cooperation in the cultural field between the parties involved. We were not there to punish or blame anyone, but to restore cultural and historic truths that could prove to be most beneficial for everybody in terms of renewed cultural cooperation. The second result was the agreement with the Boston Museum of Fine Arts to return to Italy 13 archaeological crafts. The statue of Vibia Sabina. Vibia Sabina was the wife of the Emperor Hadrian, from Hadrian's villa in Tivoli. It was maybe the most relevant. I don't know if Hadrian is so happy to be again with his wife, but we put her back to him in his villa. They didn't agree so much during the lifetime, but anyway, today they're together. Anyway, in a marble appearance. Anyway, the statue is now in Tivoli, and again we reached a much broader agreement with the American Museum, the Fine Arts Museum in Boston. And we did not seek the simple return of the statue. We agreed on several cultural exchanges and a broader agreement on a joint fight against trafficking in works of art as an illicit business source for transnational crime. Yes, we lent to Boston some noteworthy pieces, not less in value than those returned to the Italian Museum. We also established student and professional exchanges between the US and Italy. These agreements with Metropolitan Museum of Art and Fine Arts of Boston ended years of disputes and created the legal basis to achieve the most challenging but important result vis-à-vis the Getty Museum in Malibu, after a very difficult legal and diplomatic cause. The Getty Foundation accepted to lead back to Italy 40 masterpieces. The most relevant among them is certainly the Goddess of Morgantina, now at the heart of the forthcoming cultural district in the very heart of Sicily, and a potential cultural and touristic attractor from all corners, close to the celebrated Villa del Casale in Piazza Armerina. Since then, a new opportunity for cultural cooperation began, and new loans, common scientific projects, archaeological excavation, publications took a positive start. We applied the same parameter of action and judgment in negotiation with private collectors. We signed a precious bilateral agreement with Switzerland for the regulation of the import and repatriation of cultural craft and for the facilitation of the return of illegally exported goods and their return. We used cultural diplomacy not only as a means to restore legality and the historic truth, but also as a way to strengthen Italy's international relations, what I have called before our soft power. Do all these issues have something to do with populist patriotism? Not at all. There is no seed of nationalism in the actions we promoted, since they were not intended to gain a moral victory on another country, but to restore both values and the international legality. We know that culture can be another means to conduct wars. We are tragically experiencing in these days how conflicts in the area of the broader Middle East are still based on cultural and religious claims, accusations among different actors. We still experience geopolitical rivalries, dramatic controversies strictly related to cultural heritage, to the attempt to preserve or to destroy traces, traditions, churches or mosques, monuments, historic sites, even trees. Let me give you a last example of cultural diplomacy. Maintain such a symbolic power. This is the arbol of Guernica tree. I just well, say 2 minutes and I will end. This arbol is represented in the Picasso Guernica celebrated painting. And when the Lendakari, the governor of Basque country, receives a guest like me, for instance, he gives a seed for a new tree that symbolizes not only the pride of his country, but the peaceful project they have. So since then, and now, in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, the complex, often chaotic developments of the world need cultural pluralism and diversity to make globalization a mean and not necessarily an end. We politicians, analysts, and opinion makers used to refer to universal values and how they are important to shape the peaceful planet of the future. Culture is really the universal value, and cultural diplomacy is an effective tool that we have to keep sustainable relations among countries in a moment when austerity is all but supporting not only culture, but even foreign and strategic policies. The latest data from OECD, the World Bank, show that we are experiencing a repli sur soi as a consequence of fear and uncertainty related to crisis. We see it very clearly in the political arena. Nationalistic, populist, and racist movements are having large successes also in Europe. We need to relaunch culture as a tool for building a new concept for mutual understanding and pluralism. We need it for economic reasons. Culture is an extraordinary engine for growth and employment. For diplomatic reasons, culture is the best way to keep relations and to soften or solve conflicts between parts. For political and social reasons, if Europe closes its doors and maybe its minds, that could really be a dangerous existential threat for us all. Let us reimagine the spirit of Grand Tour. That resounds something for you, I guess. Also for young people, Gelato and Ice Cream and Spanish Steps by Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck. And allow me, Italy shall be, Europe and Italy shall be a fully attractive and appreciated place in the world. Our lifestyle and culture, this is today, Spanish Steps, are impossible to duplicate, shall be the attractor for research, innovation, employment, prosperity. That's the spirit of the big challenge we are facing, building a new concept for our contemporary identity as Europeans and for dialogue and peace as citizens of the world. Thank you.
Grazie mille, Signor Rutelli. I wish we had more time to ask you a question, but at least for one question we have 1.5 minutes, and if the question is short and your answer is short, okay, we should do it that way. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the examples concerning giving back objects of the arts and so on and so on. I think it's not only a problem in history, it was also a problem, I think, what has happened to those objects owned by Jews, what the Nazis did, and so on and so on. But I think we have another problem, not only in Europe, that means how to preserve it. Because obviously, I think as long as the economy is not really going, monumental protection for Italy, and not only Italy, is a big problem. Not to talk about countries where the economy is not really existing, but a lot is left here by history and so on, not seen. I think we need a broader view on this subject under global aspects. What is your proposal on this?
I may say, because I stolen some time before, that I agree. I agree that we should understand that public investment in culture is precious also for jobs, productions. And of course, you need also private investment that has to be complementary. I mean, it's a complement of that. Not, it is impossible to preserve our heritage, to invest in contemporary culture without a public investment. And states should know that that is identity and defense of diversity. Clash of Civilization is about identity that doesn't respect diversity. I think today we need more money and we need politicians.
Okay, how to do?
But I can tell you what I did. No, I can tell you what I did. I fought. That was a fight in the government, and I obtained more money for culture, for museum, to promote, not only to preserve. You can do that with public money, and you can do that with public opinion, and you can do that with money through private sector, helped through intelligent and innovative laws. If I understood your question, but if I didn't, please tell me.
I remember I read in the Guide Bleu about Italy, when they were referring to the architecture, it said, ce goût raffiné de l'architecture qui nous est venu de l'Italie est à l'Italie des cieux. This refined taste of architecture that has come to us, say the French people, that has come to us from Italy, and to Italy from the skies. So, Your Excellency, I am sure that Italians will receive again from the sky an answer to this question, and they will find a solution.
Not necessarily from the sky, because the ancients said when Rome was at the maximum of its power, but they were some rude people. Grecia capta ferum victorem cepit, means that the captured Greece conquered the conqueror, yes, through culture, and I think it is important today.
Very much. Please join me for another thanks to Mr. Rutelli.